الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Alhamdulillah, welcome to another discussion about the ideal Muslim and the ideal Muslimah. Inshallah ta'ala, today we will finish the second part of the ideal Muslim man, the protector. We talked 2 weeks ago about, Muslim men being the protector of their women. However, there comes a time where the Muslim woman needs protection from the Muslim man. And we talked about one of the reasons that Muslim men abuse their women, not just Muslim men. I mean, the premise of my discussion is to the Muslims. However, I do realize that we have non-Muslims that are people who are not Muslim who are listening, and you are more than welcome to listen. However, the premise of my discussion is for the Muslim community. Even if you are not Muslim, you can still benefit from that. All right. So we talked about Muslim men losing, in this day and time, losing the sense of overprotectiveness over their women. And, as a matter of fact, some of them have become perpetrators of the abuse themselves. Many Muslim men in many households in the Islamic community have become perpetrators of the abuse that goes on in their homes. And we talked about some of the tactics that they use: fear, guilt, intimidation, denial, blame, shame, and even sometimes physical violence. And this behavior has led to much of the depression, the anxiety, the low sense of self-worth, that many of the sisters feel or have in the Islamic community. We talked about, Islamically, we have a responsibility to protect our women. We talked about, in recent times, increased, incidents of sexual abuse against children. You have, some of these homes where, some of these Muslim children are being, sexually abused, by men that are supposed to be protecting them. These are, Muslim children who are growing up in these homes who are, supposed to be protected by these men and are actually being abused by these men, whether biological or blended, in the form of rape. Some Muslim children growing up in these homes have been raped, right? Have been sexually molested by the same men that were supposed to protect them. The same men that were supposed to protect them, they were abused by these same men. All right, emotional abuse, and it has shown that we have not done our part to remedy these issues in our community. So I segued into 5 reasons why Muslim men abuse their women. Not just Muslim men, but men in general. So let's just broaden the scope. All right, broaden the discussion. 5 reasons why men abuse their women. And the first thing that I mentioned, I don't know if you guys remember how many people were present at the discussion who remember what number 1. We only covered one. And we're going to cover a couple more today. Who remembers the first reason why men abuse their women? The first reason that we mentioned why men abuse their women, and we said that it was because of the difficulty of tolerating injury to their ego. Their ego. We don't know how to, deal with feelings of, not low self-worth, that some men have a difficulty tolerating injury to their ego. When our ego gets scarred, right, then we want to take out our abuse on people. And we've been taught that from childhood, right? We've been taught that from childhood as men. We've been taught that when somebody hurts me, somebody hurts my feelings, then I use physical abuse, right? When somebody hurts my feelings, hurts my ego, then I resort to physical abuse of that person. And of course, being in a marriage with a woman, she knows you better than you think she knows you, right? And I'm talking to men right now, right? I'm talking to men right now. Men, I want you guys to listen. Right, when a girl doesn't like you, you hit her, you be mean to her. Yes, this starts from childhood, absolutely. We've been taught this as kids on the playground. You know, I like her, but I don't know how to show her that I like her, so I'm going to be mean to her. I'm going to beat her up. I'm going to be mean to her. And when the girl turns around and says, like, why are you doing this to me? Like, why are you treating me like this? He doesn't even know how to articulate. He doesn't know how to express that I like you. I have an attraction towards you, right? I haven't attracted, right? This is a lack of maturity. I don't know how to tell you that I really love you. I don't know how to tell you that I really adore you. I really need you in my life. I don't know how to say that to you in those terms. So instead of me saying that, giving into my emotions, I allow my ego to navigate for me, and I become violent. Right? We don't know how to have our feelings hurt without retaliating in a manner that is hurtful, both physical and emotional. Look at some men in their marriages right now. When a woman says something that hurts his feelings, that hurts his ego, right? He resorts to emotional abuse or physical abuse because he doesn't know how to deal with having injury to his ego without him retaliating. And when you look at the Prophet ﷺ, there were many instances where Aisha said things to him that in a normal instance, a normal man would be offended by that. His ego would have been crushed by some of the things that she said. Look at some of the things that Aisha said to the Prophet ﷺ. And in most instances, the Prophet ﷺ just shrugged it off. He laughed it off. He smiled and walked away. On many instances, right? Many instances, he smiled and walked away. He didn't even entertain it, didn't engage her, because he realized that she was in her feelings and he wasn't going to allow her to have that much power and control over him. Like to have someone, treat you a certain way because they feel a certain way and then have you react. You've now given them power over you. You've given them the power to now dictate how you behave. That is a weakness. That is a weakness. You come home from work, you're in a good mood, you walk in the door, your wife is in a bad mood for whatever reason, and then she projects her negativity onto you, and now you go from being in a good mood to being in a horrible mood just like she is. You have now given her power over you. And that's a weakness. Some of us, that's just what it is. We don't know how to confront that. We don't know how to combat that without being injurious. We don't know how to combat that without hurting, our spouse or hurting, and this is an important social skill. This is an important social skill, right? That has been emphasized all throughout the Quran and the Sunnah. When, and I mentioned example after example of how sometimes prophets and messengers, their egos were attacked. Their egos were attacked. And they didn't respond because it wasn't about their ego. It wasn't about them personally. Not only that, they were sheep herders. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Ma min nabiyyin illa kana ra'il ghanam," that there was no prophet except that he used to be a sheep herder. And the scholars explain that hadith, that being a sheep herder helped them to develop the social skill of interacting with human beings. And this is something that as men, we are lacking in this social skill of learning how to tolerate injury to our ego without retaliating. Most of the murders that go on in the ghettos, in the inner cities of our ghettos and our hoods, most of the murders that take place because of the between young boys is as a result of a scarred or hurt ego. Go to any prison. Go to any prison and look at the influx of young African American, Hispanic, young minority men. Young minority men. Look at the youth house, the youth correctional facilities. Look at the prison industrial complexes and look at the influx of young minority males. And the vast majority of them will be serving large amounts of time, football numbers, double digits, over an injured ego. Facts. An injured ego. Somebody said something about you. Somebody said something to you. And it was injurious to your ego. You couldn't handle it. So you responded with violence. You responded with violence. And do you think that these same young men, right? Do you think that these same young men are not in relationships with women, with girls? There was just an incident a couple of years ago in Newark, New Jersey, where a girl, high school prom, she was going to her high school prom. She was graduating from high school, getting ready to start college. I believe it was in East Orange. And she was in a relationship with a guy, and he broke into the house and he murdered her. These are teenagers. This is, I'm not talking about adult men. I'm talking about teenagers still in the latter part of their adolescence. Teenage boys who, when they feel that their ego has been injured, they respond with violence. They respond with violence. So just as these men are responding to one another or responding to other men with violent behavior because their ego was scarred or their ego was hurt, do you think that they are not going to be in relationships with women and do the same exact thing to the women that they are in relationships with? Absolutely. They're doing it to the women that they are in relationships with. All right? So being able to tolerate hurt, being able to tolerate injury to your ego is an important social skill. Because in intimate relationships, we are bound to get hurt. We are bound to get hurt in intimate relationships. You understand? Anytime you are in an intimate relationship, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a marriage, it doesn't matter. Anytime that you are in an intimate relationship wherein you care dearly about the other person and their interaction with you affects you, that's an intimate relationship. There is going to be injury to your ego. Because people don't function on your frequency all the time. People don't function on your frequency all the time. People are going to go places. They're not going to say anything to you. You're going to say, well, why didn't you tell me? I didn't know I had to tell you every single place that I go. What are we in, grammar school? I had to tell you. I got to tell you everywhere I go. Oh, such and such. I'm in my feelings right now. These are men that do this. I got to tell you every single place that I go. I didn't know it was a priority why didn't you tell me that you went to such and such's house? Or why didn't you tell me that you and such went out? And it's just like, but I didn't know that it was an obligation on me to inform you of every single thing, every move that I make in my life. I can't go someplace or be with somebody without telling you and then you being in your feelings and you getting, that is an intimate relationship because it means that the other person's actions are going to affect you. When you are in a relationship with someone and it's not an intimate relationship, it doesn't bother you. It doesn't bother you. Sometimes it can be a marriage and it's not an emotional relationship. Some marriages are not emotional. So you don't care when your wife leaves out. She don't care who you with. You don't care who she having lunch with. It doesn't matter because it's not an emotional relationship. It's not an intimate relationship. You guys are just married. You're just going through the physical motions, the mechanical movements of a marriage. He paid the bills, you take the kids and drop them off, and that works for you. But it's not an intimate relationship, so the injury doesn't affect you. But when you are in an intimate relationship, the things that the person does affects you. And if you're in any intimate relationship, you have to be able to tolerate injury to your ego because it's going to happen. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Al-mu'min alladhi yukhalitu an-nas wa yasbir ala adahum khayru min al-mu'min alladhi la yukhalitu an-nas wa la yasbir ala adahum." The Prophet ﷺ said that the believer who mixes with the people and is patient with the harm that he receives from mixing with the people is better than the believer who does not mix with the people and is not patient with the harm that he receives from people. You understand? So this is an important social skill that Islam, that our religion teaches us. And men, unfortunately, because they're so boggled down with Tawheed and Minhaj and scholars and all this other trivial matters of the religion. And I'm not saying that the issue of Tawheed is trivial. I'm saying the way that Tawheed is taught in the average masjid, in the average circle of knowledge, is trivial. Because Tawheed is not being taught to help the human being develop a better relationship with God. Tawheed is taught in most of the African American Muslim communities. Tawheed is taught as a defense mechanism to protect yourself from people of innovation, to protect it. It is taught to you to make you your own worst enemy. That's what Tawheed is taught to you for. Tawheed is not taught to liberate you from the shackles of, this type of captivity or emotional captivity or physical captivity, and to develop a better relationship with God. Because the people who are teaching Tawheed, for the most part, have a horrible relationship with God. So Tawheed is taught in a manner, so when I say the trivial matters of Tawheed, that's not me having an issue with the subject of Tawheed. Tawheed is necessary, but not in the manner that it is being taught and has been taught in many of the African American Muslim communities. So while these social skills lay dormant in our religion, you have men who are going into intimate relationships with women and are becoming abusive towards those women the moment their ego is injured. Because we are not digesting this aspect of our religion, the social component of our religion, the Medinan period of our religion. We have totally neglected that. In my opinion, we have totally neglected that. So this is one of the reasons why you have abuse at high rates in some of these marriages and some of these relationships, because men don't know how to tolerate injury to their ego. Facts all day long. They don't know how to tolerate injury to their ego. And the moment his wife says something to him and he feels offended, he's going to either emotionally abuse you or physically abuse you. Okay? So now let's move on to number 2. So we got number 1 down. So the number 1 from the reasons why men are abusive to their women in their relationships is because when they feel that there is injury to their ego, they retaliate with physical pain or emotional pain. This is something that has been taught to us as children, that when somebody hurts me, somebody say something about my mother, somebody say something about the color of my skin, somebody say something about, my sneakers, somebody say something about my book bag, somebody say, you can't say nothing about me. Because in my eyes, I'm perfect. And to say something about me means I have to readjust my lens about myself, which is something that I am not ready to do and not willing to do. So instead of me taking a look at me when someone says something about me or ignoring it, I'm going to extract retribution. I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to physically or emotionally abuse you because you said something that tapped into a very sensitive side of me. Absolutely. Number 2, from the reasons why men, and the fact of the matter that is if men are listening, most of the time they're not, but those of you who are listening, if I say something that touches a nerve, then it becomes now your journey, your responsibility to say, you know what, that's me. And I need to stand in my discomfort and I need to check myself, man. We're trying to evolve. We're trying to function on higher levels and higher frequencies of consciousness. And the only way that can happen is through self-reflection. Growth and development, personal growth and development does not happen without reflection. It does not happen without self-reflection. Number 2, from the reasons why men are abusive in their relationships, in their marriages, is because of a lack of accountability. In an environment where there is no accountability, abuse of every type thrives. In environments where there is no accountability, abuse of every type thrives. Put children in a room. No parental guidance, no parental presence, and watch how the bully of those children begin to, do what they do. Do what bullies do best. When there is a parental presence, when a parent is present in the room, the bully is silent. The bully only lifts his head up and begins to do what a bully does when they know that there is an environment where they can get away with their bullying. Those are environments where bullying exists, where abuse exists, in environments where there is no accountability. In the religion of Islam, there is accountability. There is accountability in the religion of Islam. It's the men in the Muslim community, many men in the Muslim community who lack the testicular fortitude to call out the abuse as it is. There's nothing wrong with Islam. Nothing wrong with the religion of Islam. Everything wrong with the men in the religion of Islam at this point. When Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu anhu was the Khalifa, there was a lot of turmoil in the Islamic community. A lot of fitna, a lot of fighting, a lot of bloodshed. So a man came to Ali bin Abi Talib and he said, Wayhak, woe be to you. He said, when Abu Bakr and Umar was the Khalifa, we didn't have this much fitna. And now that you are the Khalifa, we have so much fitna. And Ali radiallahu anhu, he turned around and he looked at the man and he said, when Ali said to the man, when Abu Bakr and Umar was the Khalifa, كان ورائهما أمثالي أنا وأمثالي وأنا الآن الخليفة ورائي أمثالك. Ali radiallahu anhu, the man said to him, when Abu Bakr and Umar was the Khalifa, we didn't have this many problems. Now you are the Khalifa, we have so many problems. And Ali looked at the man and he said, that is because when Abu Bakr and Umar was the Khalifa, they had men like me behind them. And now I'm the Khalifa and we're having so many problems because I got people like you behind me. You're a coward. You're a coward. You sit back from a place of privilege, right? And then you yell about all of the problems going on, right? But you're part of the problem because you don't say anything about it. You don't do anything. Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu was a rajul. Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu was a man. He told this man, fitna didn't exist during the time of Abu Bakr and Umar because they had people like me behind them. Islam gives us the skeleton. We have to put the bones and the meat. We have to put the meat and the flesh on the skeleton. Islam gives us the halal, the haram, the rules, regulations, guidelines. That's all good. You'll find all of that in Islam. But Islam needs men to uphold that. Men to uphold that. And in the Islamic community, within the past 20 years, in the Islamic community, since I have been a Muslim, I have seen, heard, witnessed, counseled tons of women who have been abused in their homes, and nothing is done about it. Nothing. 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 There is a lack of accountability in the Islamic community. And in an environment where there is accountability, where there is no accountability, abuse of every kind thrives. The Prophet ﷺ advocated for the rights of the women and swore by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to seek retribution from those who violated the women and their rights. Prophet ﷺ was a rajul, was a man. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was a rajul, was a man. Abu Bakr said, Wallahi, anybody who denies me the zakat that they used to give to the Prophet ﷺ, لَأُقَاتِلَنَّهُمْ rajulan. He said, I will fight every single person who denies me zakat. Denies me the zakat that they used to give to the Prophet ﷺ, wallahi, I'll fight every single one of them by myself. By myself. Abu Bakr said, by myself, I will fight every single one of them. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, Allahumma, listen to this, brothers. Brothers, listen to this. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, Allahumma inni la uharriju haqqa ad-da'ifain al-yatim wal-mar'a. The Prophet ﷺ said, Oh Allah, bear witness that I will seek retribution for the rights of the two weak from amongst us, and that is the yatim, the orphan, wal-mar'a, and the woman. Any man who violates the rights of a woman or an orphan in my community, Allahumma la uharriju haqqahuma. I swear by Allah, I will go after the person who violates their rights, and I will get their haqq back. I will get their haqq back. This is the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For all you on the Sunnah Salafi, right? For all you, that's so concerned with, name tags and resumes. I listen to this sheikh, I follow this sheikh, I don't take from him. Man, I don't need your resume, man. That's your resume. I'm not moved by that. What's your practice of Islam look like? Miss me with all of the theoretics about who you is and what you on and all that other. I don't have time for that, man. What are you establishing? What are you building? What do you represent in your actions? You go to all of these Salafi communities, all these battered, abused women who've been taken advantage of, and then these same women hide behind the niqab, hide behind the term Salafi, hide behind these communities, and these same communities you abandon the moment you feel like you've been violated one too many times and ain't nobody gonna help you. Now all of a sudden you don't go to Germantown. Now all of a sudden you don't go to Ahlul Hadith. Now all of a sudden you don't go here, you don't go here. But you was just advocating for them yesterday. You was just advocating hardcore, follower. But the moment you've been violated one too many times and your rights were not retrieved for you, then you want to bounce. I mean, like, it's all good. I mean, like, I'm not bad. I'm just calling it as it is, man. I'm just calling it as it is. I mean, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just calling it as it is, man. But, I mean, the fact of the matter is that, nobody is there to retrieve your rights from you. Nobody is there to retrieve your rights. We're talking about sisters being knocked out in front of the masjid, and nobody did a damn thing about it. Sisters being punched in the face, wearing niqab. And some of these same individuals y'all still be listening to. Punch your wife in both of her eyes black. She wearing niqab, not because she wear the niqab. A lot of you sisters, and I said it before, you hide behind the veil. You hide behind the niqab. Stop abusing Islam because you refuse to address the abuse that is being done to you. It is what it is, man. But the Prophet ﷺ advocated for the rights of the two weak people in his community. And by weak, the Prophet ﷺ meant that, of course, the yatim, the orphan, this is the type of child who his father died before he reached the age of puberty. So therefore, someone else is taking care of him, right? Somebody else is taking care of him or her. So there's no male figure in the, no biological father, there for the child. So there's a weakness there. Your father dies, especially if you're a girl. If you're a girl and your father dies before you reach the age of puberty, you are vulnerable. There's a vulnerability there. Especially if your father didn't have any brothers, you don't have any uncles. You may have a grandfather who is old, can't move like that. You are vulnerable in a society where men take advantage of women. So he said, Allahumma inni la uharriju haqqa ad-da'ifain. He said, oh Allah, bear witness that I will retrieve the rights of the two weak people in my community, al-yatim wal-mar'a, the orphan and the woman. So the yatim, the orphan, is vulnerable because this is the type of child whose father dies before he or she reaches the age of puberty. And a woman is vulnerable. Why? Because she's a woman. She's the ultimate vulnerability in our community. The moment she steps out of her home by herself, she's vulnerable. Whether she can fight, whether she has a firearm, a permit to carry, all of that means absolutely nothing. Men are not intimidated by women in terms of physical intimidation. A man is intimidated by another man. If a man walk into a room, right, I hate to quote rappers, but I mean, it's so relevant at this point. Nas, he said that everybody is a Don until a Don walks into a room. You understand? Men understand that language. Now, everybody's a Don, everybody's a goon, and everybody's a Don until a Don walks into a room. Absolutely. When an alpha male walk into a room of other men, weak-hearted men, they automatically take their rightful place as an inferior, as a subordinate. Facts. That does not happen when a woman walks into a room. You understand? When a woman walks into a room, even if she's, degreed up, even if she's, at the top of her game and on the corporate ladder, she's always going to be vulnerable, always going to be looked at as a victim for the next man who is audacious enough to try to take advantage of her. You understand? But when a man walks into a room, everybody who is not intimidated, everybody who is intimidated by that man will take his rightful place. Facts all day long. We see that. I've been in prison. I've seen it with my own eyes. When a man walks into a room, Men might be intimidated by a woman because, okay, she's in a position of power. She's at the top of her game, in the corporate world or whatever the case may be. But physically intimidated by a woman? I'm sorry. I didn't grow up in that environment. So if someone says I disagree, then perhaps you grew up in a different environment. I grew up in the hood. I grew up in an environment where it was a dog-eat-dog world. And the men that I grew up around were not intimidated by women. They abused women. They took advantage of women. So the type of intimidation that I'm talking about is physical intimidation. So the Prophet ﷺ swore to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to avenge the rights of the woman and the orphan in his community if they, in the event that they were violated. Why did the Prophet ﷺ take such an interest in defending the woman and defending the orphan in the community? Why such an interest? Because he understood that there had to be accountability. If you're dealing with men, you're dealing with a community where women are vulnerable, there has to be accountability in order for men who are looking for the opportunity to take advantage of a woman. There has to be accountability, because when there's accountability, those type of men will think twice. You understand? Those type of men will think twice. As I said before, abuse thrives in environments where there is no accountability. So the Prophet ﷺ making this statement publicly was him stating that there will be accountability. If you take advantage of a woman in my community, you take advantage of an orphan in my community, there will be accountability. That's what the Prophet ﷺ was trying to establish. When the women came to the Prophet ﷺ's houses complaining about the abuse of their husbands, all right? Mind you, prior to the Prophet ﷺ emerging with the revelation of Islam, the dawah of Islam, pre-Islamic Arab society was very male chauvinistic and dominant. And women were abused in those environments. So just because the Prophet ﷺ emerged with Islam didn't mean that that was going to automatically stop. That is a cultural tradition. And that takes time for people to wean themselves off of that. Which is why the Quran did not prohibit alcohol immediately. Which is why Islam did not prohibit certain things immediately, because these were cultural behaviors that take time to wean people off. So even though, physical abuse was something that was not, allowed in Islam, it was still being done. Until one night, some of the women came out of their homes going to the houses of the Prophet ﷺ to complain about the physical abuse of their husbands. Whether it was smacking them, whether it was beating them, whatever the case may be. In some instances you saw where Abu Bakr was getting physical with his own daughter, with Aisha. So we can see, and if any of you have ever spent any time in the Arab world, you know that Arabs are very abusive, very physically abusive. To their children, to their wives, yes. Very. They are very abusive, even till today in their community. Abuse, straightens out a lot of situations. Physical abuse straightens out a lot of situations in, Arab communities, in Arab homes. They use abuse. So these women came to the houses of the Prophet ﷺ to complain about the physical abuse of their husbands. What did the Prophet ﷺ do? Did he send those women home and say, go home, be patient, inshallah? Make dua, inshallah. Because this is what Islamic leadership resorts to when we don't want to get involved with anything. We say, sister, just be patient. Inshallah, just make dua, inshallah. Make dua. Make dua for what? The man is clearly beating the woman, physically abusing the woman, sexually abusing the children. What dua is she going to make to fix that? What dua is she going to make to fix that, brother? Stop saying just make dua. No. Sisters, the next time a brother tells you just make dua, ask him, what dua am I going to make, brother? Give me a dua from the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sunni, Salafi. Give me a dua from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that I can make to make this go away. Give me a dua that I can make from the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that can make this go away. And then I'll salamna, I submit. MashaAllah. Just make dua, sister. What does that even mean? What dua am I going to make? Please teach me a dua from the Prophet ﷺ where a woman came to him with this type of abuse and he told her to make dua. Please give me that hadith and I'll walk away and I'll accept your advice of just, make dua. Other than that, then you are responsible. If you don't know, then you are responsible saying, I don't know what to tell you to do, sister. I don't. And refer her to somebody who does. But don't keep telling people, just make dua, inshallah, be patient. Be patient with what? With him beating on her? Be patient with that? Is that what you're telling me, brother? You're telling me to be patient with physical abuse. Now, I came to you. This is a woman going to her imam, her student of knowledge, who sat with all of these sheikhs. But you still can't give me clear-cut evidence from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ where a woman came to him with a similar situation and he gave her the advice that you've given me. Student of knowledge. If you don't know, then just say you don't know and refer me to somebody who does. Don't say, just be patient. No, come on, don't give me that. Don't give me the just be patient. That means go away, go continue to endure the pain that your husband is giving you because I don't really want to say anything. I don't want to really get involved with it. And you shouldn't be an imam. You shouldn't be a student of knowledge. We want the accolades without accountability. Students of knowledge. You want the accolades, but you want that without accountability. You want that without responsibility. You want to be able to go sit in front of a crowd of people sitting in front of you at a lecture, open up your book and say, Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, and the sheikh is saying here and the sheikh is saying here. You want that, but you don't want the responsibility that comes along with. You understand? And you don't get to do that. You don't get to open up books in front of crowded masjids and walk away, go home, go to sleep, and not lose any sleep. Meanwhile, you have sisters in their relationships being tortured by some of the same men who sit in your damn lectures. Some of the same men who sit in your lectures, some of these students of knowledge and imams and preachers and teachers, you are aware of the men who are doing the abuse. And you say absolutely nothing. You tell a woman, go home and be patient, or go home and make dua as if somehow that's going to make the pain disappear. Gotta be kidding me, man. So, the Prophet ﷺ, what did he do? These women came to the houses of the Prophet ﷺ complaining about the abuse that the men were doing to their women. What did the Prophet ﷺ say to these men? The Prophet ﷺ got on the minbar. The Prophet ﷺ got on the minbar the very next day. He got on the minbar. This was public. He didn't give a private lecture. Take the CD after the lecture is over. Go back and listen to the CD. Make sure you didn't say anything that could be, attributed to a mistake, and then release it out into the public sphere. That's what some of the Salafi brothers do. They give a lecture, they retrieve the audio, and then they go back and they listen to it, they edit it, cut this out, cut that out. Somebody can misinterpret this, interpret that, and then they release it 2-3 weeks later. MashaAllah. Here again, we want the accolades of the student of knowledge, the imam, preacher, teacher. We want the accolades that come with that, but we don't want the accountability that comes with that. You can't have your cake and eat it too, man. You can't have your cake and eat it too. I would much rather our Islamic communities be saturated with men that may not have the degree of knowledge that some of these students of knowledge have, but they have testicular fortitude. They have testicular fortitude, and they don't mind calling out nonsense when they see it. Than to have a bunch of, knowledgeable, so-called knowledgeable imam, students of knowledge running around, and they got hearts that pump Kool-Aid. Cowards. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, women have come to the homes of my wives, of the household of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, complaining about the abuse of their husbands. He said, "Ma haula bi khayri rijalikum." These men are not real men. They are not the best men from amongst you. He criticized the entire manhood in public. You understand? He criticized the manhood of these men, and they knew who they were. The Prophet ﷺ didn't sugarcoat that. He got on the minbar in public. He said that these men who are physically abusing their women, they are not the best men from amongst you. Criticized the entire manhood. مَا هَؤُلَاءِ بِخَيْرِ رِجَالِكُمْ. These men are not the best men from amongst you, meaning they are the worst of the men from amongst you. They are the worst of the men from amongst you. And the Prophet said this publicly. Publicly. I don't know about you, but here again, I stand to be challenged. I have never once in my life heard of a khutbah, a 3-day lecture about, physical abuse that is being done to women in their homes. I've never heard a khutbah about it. I've never heard a khutbah about it. When I came into Islam, when I started to go to the community, the Masjid Ahl Sunnah, right, in East Orange, New Jersey, back in 1999, right, there was a very famous lecture, and I'm sorry, I gotta call it out, man. It is what it is. I mean, it was done publicly, so it's not backbiting. I don't have anything against Abu Muslima personally, but I gotta call it out. It is what it is. Abu Muslima did a lecture called WAP. If those of you who are around at that time, you remember WAP, right? He did a lecture telling brothers to go home and whoop their women. Beat their wives. Facts. Facts. I can't sugarcoat that, man. He gave a lecture telling brothers to go home and whoop their wives, to beat their women. Nobody said a word about it. Nobody said, no imam, nobody said anything about that. Nobody countered that on a minbar and a lecture, nothing. Even after years passed and Abu Muslima did not have the power that he had back then, nobody still said anything about it. Nobody went back and corrected that. You understand? This is what we come from. This is the Islamic community that we come from. Whoop their wives, to go home and beat their wives. You understand? This is where we come from. So for those of you guys who are dealing with abusive men now, then, I mean, of course, it's the whole jargon of women nushuz and being disobedient to their husbands, using these phrases and these terms of being disobedient and things like that, whatever the case may be. Come on, man. And there was no retraction. He ain't going to retract even till today. This lecture will reach him, right? Will reach him. And I hope it does. Will reach him. And he'll still come up with an ayat or hadith or some, philosophical response for why he felt like he was justified for doing that. And I'm saying it's wrong. It's wrong. facts all day long. It's wrong. The Prophet ﷺ got on the minbar and he said, the men who abuse their women physically, these are the worst men from amongst you. Meanwhile, you got Muslim imams here in the African American Muslim community on the minbar or in a lecture series, in a lecture, that tapes being sold in the tape store. I mean, just think of the logic in this. Maybe now we can hindsight 50-50. Maybe now, we can, right? Maybe now we can hindsight 50-50. We can go back and we can look at the situation and say, wow, that was crazy. Maybe when we were in that situation, we couldn't see, we couldn't see that far. But I'm saying now, looking back at that situation, we have a history, even from higher ups of Islamic leadership, that have condoned the abuse of women. For whatever reason, there's no justification for it. I don't care why he said it. I don't care why he said it. It was no justification for it. The Prophet ﷺ, when he found out that Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, was going to divorce his wife without a legitimate reason, the Prophet ﷺ said to him, Inna talaqa ummi Ayyub huban. He said, Abu Ayyub, to divorce Ayyub without a legitimate reason, man, is sinful. Don't do that. We hear a brother in the conversation, man, I'm not feeling this bint. You know what I mean? I'm about to divorce. I'm about to put this bint in iddah. I'm about to pronounce talaq on this bint and all this other, jive talk. I don't know what you call it amongst the brothers. And the brother will sit there and be like, yeah, man, because my wife know another sister, so you can just divorce her. And so we just going to divorce her and jump to another situation, right? You're not going to give the brother any advice and tell the brother, why don't you, slow down and work your situation out. Work your situation out. Why hear a brother talk about how he going to divorce his wife and then condone it? Why not tell a brother to go to counseling? Why not tell the brother, slow your roll, pump your brakes before you decide to do that? You got kids with this woman, don't do that. Why not talk the brother off the ledge? That's another form of abuse that we condone. But the Prophet ﷺ checked it. When he found out Abu Ayyub was going to divorce Ayyub, he said, Inna talaqi Ayyub huban, yani ithman. He said, to divorce Ayyub without a legitimate reason, it is sinful. Don't do that. Don't do that. The Prophet ﷺ told Fatima bint Qais, I'm giving you example after example after example. The Prophet ﷺ, you can stop me when you tell me that I deviated from the Quran and the Sunnah. Stop me. Please. Please stop me when I've deviated from the Quran and the Sunnah, brothers and sisters. Stop me. Because they'll say, oh, don't listen to him. He's astray. Tell me, please, stop me when I've deviated from the Quran and the Sunnah. Have I not given you anything but Quran and Sunnah since I started talking? Stop me the moment I deviate from the Quran and the Sunnah. All right. So here's another hadith. Right. Let me give you, for all you Dalil, followers. Okay. Cool. So the first hadith that I mentioned, where the Prophet ﷺ said that I will, extract retribution for those who, violate the rights of the two weak ones, the yatim and the woman. That hadith was collected in the Sunnah of Imam al-Nasa'i, and the hadith was graded Hasan. All right, that's number one. The second hadith was collected in Sahih al-Bukhari. Right? The third hadith collected in the Sunnah of Abu Dawood. And now I'm going to give you another hadith that was also in Sahih al-Bukhari in the chapter of marriage. Stop me, right? Stop me when I deviate from the Quran and the Sunnah. Smoke screen, man. Smoke screen to keep you asleep. The Prophet ﷺ, Fatima bint Qais, she came to the Prophet ﷺ. And she said, Muawiyah and Abu Jahm proposed to me. Which one of them should I marry? The Prophet ﷺ said, أَمَّا مُعَاوِيَ فَصَائِلُكَ لَا مَالَ لَهُ أَمَّا Abu Jahm فَضَرَّابٌ لِلنِّسَاءِ. He said, as for Muawiyah, he's poor. He doesn't have any money. Don't marry him. He said, as for Abu Jahm فَضَرَّابٌ لِلنِّسَاءِ. He beats his women. Don't marry him. He called it out. You understand? There was accountability. There was accountability. It wasn't just, oh, he beats his women. No. So now when a sister wants to get married, to a brother, and we know that the brother has had past experiences of domestic abuse, we cannot condone that. I want brothers to understand this. Do you understand that if you know that a brother beat his wife, and then you know that he is about to marry another woman, it becomes your responsibility to make sure that information reaches that woman before she does it. You understand? The Prophet ﷺ said, Amma Muawiyah فَصَائِلُكَ. As for Muawiyah, he's poor, don't marry him. Amma Abu Jahm فَضَرَّابٌ لِلنِّسَاءِ. He said, as for Abu Jahm, he beats his women. Don't marry him. He called it out. He didn't remain silent. He didn't sit back and say nothing and watch this brother marry sister after sister after sister and beat every single one of them. You understand? You understand? The Prophet ﷺ called it out. Why can't we do that? Why as men do we find it so difficult when we know that a brother is, beating his women? Know that a man is physically abusive towards his women, and we say nothing. We say nothing. We don't even bring awareness to the issue. We say nothing. Yet, we know that it goes on. I just gave you 3 examples of the Prophet ﷺ calling it out. 3 examples. And this was in the Medinan period in such a small span of time. We're talking about over a period of 20 years. And we have not had a group of imams, students of knowledge, who collectively put their resources together to bring awareness to the abuse that goes on in these homes with these brothers. Not one. So I'm kind of puzzled. Either it does exist and we don't want to deal with it, or it doesn't exist at all and I'm just talking crazy. So there was accountability, even if in the form of public awareness. That's all I'm asking. I'm not saying go put your hands on somebody. I mean, that's a personal issue. If you choose to do that, that's totally up to you. That's totally up to you. I'm not saying one way or another. That's your responsibility. So what I'm saying is, why can't we at least bring awareness to this in public? Why can't we at least bring awareness to this in public? So that those men who feel like they want to use abuse to get their way with women or to control women understand that your stuff will be called out in public. We don't give a damn about your guns. We don't care how tough you are. We don't care how many years you did in prison. All of that means nothing. That is your resume. I don't care about your resume. I don't care about your resume. How many legs you shot, how many people you shot, how tough you are, how thorough you are. I don't care. I am a servant of Rabbul Alameen, of the Lord of everything that exists. You think I give a damn about how many people you shot, how many times you've been to jail? I don't care about that. I don't care about that. That doesn't move me one iota. Not one. Not one inkling of fear does that instill in me, period. I could care less. But the fact of the matter is that when do we bring this to public attention? Or do we continue to sweep it under the prayer rug and keep moving along And what ends up happening, if you don't understand how this plays out in the end, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that the majority of the followers of the Dajjal will be who? Who are the majority of the people that will follow the Dajjal when he emerges? Women. Women. The majority of the people who will follow the Dajjal will be women. And part of the reason for that is the fact that there will be so much oppression in the world. And women at the helm of it. Women at the helm of it. And the Dajjal is offering, justice. Even if in a, form of, the underlying premise of the justice is to serve him and to worship him and to serve his agenda. The fact of the matter is that the women will be the vast majority of the followers of the Dajjal. Vulnerable, absolutely. So there was accountability in the community of the Prophet ﷺ, even if it was just in the form of public awareness and bringing it to the community's attention, which attaches a degree of shame to domestic abuse that would at least make men who've considered using violence or abuse against women to gain control over them think twice about resorting to such measures. In contrast to the Muslim community today, there is no accountability, not even a degree of public awareness. Not even a degree of public awareness. Not even. Nobody says anything. We know it exists, but we refuse to address it. We get so wrapped up in the politics of looking the part that we forget the part that we're trying to play. We get so wrapped up in playing the part, the politics of it all. The politics of it all. Oh no, that doesn't exist. Suicide amongst Muslim children. We don't say anything about it. Domestic abuse amongst women. We don't say anything about it. Mental health issues amongst our men. We don't say nothing about it. I'm saying, not shaming the community at all, Brother Jay. What I'm saying, I'm speaking upon my limited knowledge. Now, if you know of a community where these things are addressed, then please, by all means, let me know. I've been saying that from the beginning. I'm not negating that it doesn't exist. I'm negating my knowledge of its existence. You understand? I'm negating my knowledge of its existence. I'm saying, as far as my knowledge is concerned, I don't know of a community, of an imam, of anyone. Now, if you do know, then bring that into the discussion. And we can highlight that. We can shed light on that. Perhaps we can direct people to go to that community to get some of their issues addressed. But I'm saying, as far as I'm concerned, I haven't seen one lecture, one, 3-day lecture, conference, event, I haven't seen anything. Nothing. And meanwhile, this stuff goes on every day. Every day. And the thing about it is that it's not just physical abuse. It's emotional abuse. It's abuse on many levels. As I said at the very beginning, whenever there is a lack of accountability, abuse of every type thrives. Abuse of every type thrives. Where you have brothers who, get mad at their wives and go marry a second wife. Get upset and, threaten to divorce her. I mean, just know there is no accountability. None. We know it exists, but we refuse to address it. We get so wrapped up in the politics of looking the part that we actually forget the part that we are trying to look good for. The politics of it all. A simple khutbah, a simple lecture, a simple workshop wherein domestic abuse is addressed would be enough to free ourselves from blame in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's something called bara'at al-dhimma. Bara'at al-dhimma. All right? And the scholars of Usul al-Fiqh, they use this term to say that in a situation that is widespread, you as an individual have to do your own part to make sure that before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are not blameworthy. Bara'at al-dhimma. And as a community, we have a responsibility. That we have a responsibility to bring awareness to this so that before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we can say that we did our part. We didn't stop it, but we brought awareness to it. I'm not trying to stop it because we can't stop it. Brothers come home from prison and they were in environments where abuse was used to get your way. You think that this same brother who goes into a marriage is not going to use abuse to get his way? And I mean, brothers are coming home from prison every other week. Somebody coming home from prison and marrying another sister in the community. You understand? So I'm not trying to stop it. I'm just trying to bring more awareness to it. No, we're going to get into early childhood traumas. That's actually the next issue. All right? But we haven't even done that. And there is a strong possibility that we may all be accountable before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَاتَّقُوا فِتْنَةً لَا تُصِيبَنَّ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا مِنْكُمْ خَاصَّةً وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ شَدِيدُ الْعِقَابِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran in Surah number 8, ayat 25. Surah 8, ayat 25. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and fear a fitna. Fear a trial or tribulation that will not only befall the wrongdoers from amongst you. And know that Allah is severe in punishment. Know that God is severe in punishment. Allah does not like oppression. And to remain complacent, complicit in the face of oppression is to choose the side of the oppressor. Absolutely. So now let's move to number 3. Got a couple of minutes. I'm gonna just scratch the surface a little bit. I want you guys to stay with me. Number 3, brothers, if you are listening, please pay attention. Please pay attention. Number 3, from the reasons that men abuse women in their relationships. Number 3, for the reasons why men abuse women in their marriages is unaddressed trauma. Unaddressed trauma. So let's talk about that. Unaddressed trauma. You have many men walking amongst us who have trauma from their childhood. Trauma from their childhood that has yet to be addressed. And marriage is the center where all of it exposes itself because your spouse is going to trigger you. Facts. Your spouse is going to trigger you. Allah put you and your spouse in the same relationship, in the same home, in the same, emotional space together for a reason. There's a reason that you are with the person that you are with, or you were with the person that you were with. There's a reason for that. You are going to trigger each other until you either continue running away from your problem or you stand there and you fix it. Your spouse is going to trigger you. Your spouse is going to trigger you. That's what your spouse is supposed to do. It's supposed to trigger you. So you can bring out all of that unaddressed trauma so that you can look at it right in your face and address it. The Prophet ﷺ said, Al-mu'min mir'atu lil-mu'min, that the believer is a mirror to another believer. Your spouse is going to mirror to you all of the things that you need to fix about you. Don't look at your spouse and say, it's that person's fault. That's victimizing. That's how you escape taking responsibility for yourself. Stop doing that. Stop victimizing. You are not a victim. You are not a victim. You are a participant, or should be a participant, in your own self-discovery. You are a participant in your own self-discovery. You cannot discover yourself by yourself. When you are in a relationship with someone, they're going to trigger you and bring out all of those things that lay dormant inside of you, and then give you an opportunity to help you fix it. When you are alone by yourself, you're making money, you got your apartment, you got your home, you got your furniture, you got your car, everything is going good. You believe that life is good. You are perfect. You don't need to do nothing. You don't need to fix anything about yourself. You understand? That's what we do when we single. We overcompensate for materialism. We overcompensate with materialism. We go get a good job. We hurt. We in pain. We go get a good job. We start making, 2 jobs. We start making a lot of money. We go back to school. We get a good degree. You're moving up in the, in the level in academia, right? And all of those things are what you're doing is layering. You're throwing blankets. Throwing blankets on top of all of your issues. Right? So that you can always look at your accomplishments and say, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm perfect. Look at my accomplishments. I managed to get a master's degree. I managed to go back to school and get my PhD. I drive a Mercedes Benz. I drive an E-Class. Look at my home. It's beautiful. Got a pool in the backyard. I take trips. I go, I enjoy I'm living my best life. Meanwhile, you are hurting on the inside. Absolutely. Because none of those things helped you fix the real issues in your life. None of those things help you fix the real issues in your life. Being in a relationship with someone is what helps to, expose to you the issues about yourself that you need to fix. Right? Unaddressed trauma. Much of the trauma that we've experienced in childhood haunts us in adulthood. If we don't recognize the symptoms and begin to fix them. Much of the trauma that we experience in childhood haunts us in adulthood if we do not acknowledge, recognize the symptoms, and fix them. Some of us as men, right? Some of us as men were abused as children. And I'll be the first to say that I was physically abused as a kid. I was subjected to not just normal butt whoopings. It was very traumatic. Very traumatic. Right? And I can admit that at this point because I've already made peace with that. That doesn't haunt me. I've made peace with that. But some of us as men were abused as children, or we witnessed abuse. Maybe you weren't abused, right? But you witnessed abuse, the abuse of your mother, right? The abuse of your mother, the abuse of, other family members. You don't have to be the victim of abuse to be traumatized, but you can witness abuse and be traumatized. You can witness abuse. Maybe nothing ever happened to you physically, but you witnessed abuse in your home, and that is traumatizing. All right? So some of us were victims of abuse, and some of us witnessed abuse in our own homes, the abuse of our mothers. And it made us highly reactive to injury. We have now, as men, become hyper vigilant. Operative phrase. If you don't learn anything else today as a man, I want you to go back and I want you to look up this term, hypervigilance. Many of us as men, especially those of us who came out of the hood, no doubt, facts. If you sold drugs, you grew up in a, highly, high crime environments where there were shootings, murders, robberies, drug dealing. You grew up in those type of environments. 9 times out of 10, you are hyper vigilant. You had to be. You had to be. You had to be. There's no way you grew up in that type of environment and you are not hyper vigilant. Some of us had to be hyper vigilant because some of that same stuff that we saw outside of our doors was going on right in our houses. We had family members that was using drugs, snorting coke, finding needles in the bathroom, finding vials of cocaine in the bathroom, right? People using drugs in your home. Violence going on in your home. Your father beating up on your mother, or your older brother and your mother getting into a fight, or you understand what I'm saying? Cousins coming home, coming in the door, bleeding from the leg, shot. You're seeing this stuff. You're witnessing this stuff. And it made us hyper vigilant. So now let me show you what hyper vigilance looks like. Because this is what makes men violent in their homes. This is what makes men violent because it is trauma and it's unaddressed. Hypervigilance is a state of increased alertness. You are extremely sensitive to your surroundings. And if you're a man and you're married right now and you came out of, those type of environments, I want you to be aware of, because, nisful ilaj ma'rifatu sabab, right? Half of your cure is in recognizing your disease. Half of your cure is in recognizing that you have a disease. That's half of your problem. So many of us need to recognize when you find yourself being, extremely abusive in the home, you find yourself, flying off the deep end, going from 0 to 100 real quick. You find yourself like that. Then there's probably some unaddressed trauma in your life that you have not addressed. And you are using your wife, your children, your home as the domain in which you take out all of that unaddressed trauma on the people that are closest to you. Facts. Hypervigilance is a state of increased alertness. You're aware of your surroundings. You're extremely sensitive to your surroundings. And the dangers that you fear are most of the time, not even real. They're not even real dangers. Your wife is not trying to hurt you. Your wife is not trying to hurt your feelings. Your wife is not trying to, your wife is not there, doesn't wake up saying, yeah, I'm going to get on his nerves today. I'm going to hurt him today. But most of the danger that we perceive is not even real. You take everything serious, right? You have men like, yeah, well, I'm a serious person. I take a lot of stuff serious. Nah, you don't take a lot of stuff serious. You got some unaddressed trauma that made you like that. You didn't come out of your womb. You didn't come out your mother's womb, hypersensitive about everything. You take everything so serious. Come on, man. Let's get to the root of that. All right. We become hypervigilant, which is an enhanced state of sensory sensitivity accompanied by exaggerated, intensified behaviors. So now that we understand what hypervigilance is, I want the men to look at themselves and begin to do some reflection. It's not a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. It's the person is always on edge, always trying. It's a protection for themselves. They grew up in an environment, they grew up in a home where they were constantly subjected to trauma. So in order for them to protect themselves, they had to be aware of what was coming around the corner. They had to be aware. A lot of times this happens to women when they are, sexually abused, when they are molested. by a man in the home. So, every man, she's always looking at them with a side eye. Like, when is the other shoe going to drop? When is this person going to really try to take advantage of me? Because you are now become subjected to trauma, which makes you hypervigilant. It's a self-protection, right? You're protecting yourself, right? You become hypersensitive and your actions become exaggerated. Right, you can't turn off the fight or flight, absolutely. Even when there's nothing to run away from or nothing to be protected from. You know what I mean? Like, even when there's nothing there, some of this stuff is figments of your imagination. You become hypervigilant. Every comment has to be scrutinized, So what do you mean by that? So what are you trying to say? It's just like, dude, like you don't have to look into everything. This is also the aftermath of crossing over from a domestic violence victim to a survivor. Yes, absolutely. And PTSD is part of the symptoms. Absolutely. So now I'm going to read some of the physical and hypervigilance has physical symptoms. It has behavioral symptoms. It has emotional symptoms, and it has triggers. So I'm going to breeze through this really quickly and then we'll end. Some of the physical symptoms of being hypervigilant is that you sweat a lot profusely, right? Profusely. You have a fast heart rate, and your breathing is shallow. Your breathing is shallow because your heart rate, your heart is moving so fast. These are some of the physical symptoms of hypervigilance. Some of the behavioral symptoms is that you have a knee-jerk reaction to your environment. Every time somebody says something to do something to you, you got to have a knee-jerk reaction to it. You don't know how to just let stuff slide. You don't know how to just let stuff go. You don't know how to let stuff just ride. You have to have a knee-jerk reaction to everything in your environment. When something pushes you, you got to push back. Knee-jerk reaction to everything. You overreact when you misunderstand a comment or something somebody said to you. When you misunderstand it, you overreact without even trying to understand what the person is saying. You overreact before you even got the gist of what the person is trying to say. You misunderstood the whole comment. And then you overreact based upon that misunderstanding. You don't even take the time out to actually understand what the person is trying to say to you. It's just an immediate response. Almost instinctive. Somebody said something and you respond. You didn't even really understand what the person was trying to say to you, but your response is overreacting. And you're constantly defending yourself. Constantly protecting yourself, defending yourself. And if you're married to a brother like this, and to be honest with you, in the past, I've seen traits of this even within myself. Even within myself. I'm going through the material and I'm like, damn, yeah, absolutely. Hypervigilant. Hypervigilant. Real talk. If you came up in the inner city, 9 times out of 10, you're hypervigilant. And then we're going into relationships with women who may not be hypervigilant, may not have had some of those experiences that you had, right? And you're taking that out on them. So the behavioral symptoms is a knee-jerk reaction to your environment. Overreacting when you misunderstand something. And constant defense of yourself. Constantly defending yourself. Lastly, the emotional symptoms. Some of the emotional symptoms of someone who is hypervigilant. Fear of judgment. Right? This is where the self-defense comes from. You protecting yourself because you don't like to be judged. You have a fear of judgment. So you paint yourself as so perfect And the thing about Islam is that a lot of brothers learn Islam so they can protect themselves. You understand? You have some Muslim men who learn just enough about Islam to protect themselves out of fear of judgment. Absolutely. Facts. And that is dangerous because you are using something that is supposed to liberate you from this stuff and you're using it to protect you. That is exactly, Maysoon. That's exactly how Islam is taught. Islam is taught to defend yourself, to protect yourself, because perhaps Islam is being taught to us by some imams, preachers, teachers, students of knowledge who are themselves victims of childhood trauma. Facts. Yeah. If Islam is constantly being taught in an environment where it is, it is being taught to you in a way where you can defend and protect yourself rather than liberate yourself and make yourself solely for the pleasure of God, then it may be a possibility that the people that are teaching us, and I'm going to let you guys figure that out for yourself. I know a lot of the imams. I know a lot of imams. I know a lot of students of knowledge. I know a lot of preachers and teachers. And I know that many of them have been traumatized. Childhood trauma. I know. Facts. I'm not telling you from something somebody else told me. I'm telling you from stuff that I know personally. From the Salafi community to the Sunni community to other than that. I know personally brothers who have childhood trauma. You can talk to them for 10 minutes and you can see the trauma in how they talk, how they communicate, how they interact. Not just a lack of communication skills, a lack of social skills. And then that is packaged in what we call Salafiyah. Packaged in what we call minhaj, packaged in what we call tawheed, packaged and then delivered out into the community. And so there's a wonder why people are a part of some of these communities, have been studying under some of these imams, preachers, and teachers for years. And there is absolutely no personal growth and development on the part of these brothers who are sitting at the feet of these so-called imams, students of knowledge, preachers, and teachers. Absolutely. No personal growth. No personal growth whatsoever. You done study Kitab al-Tawheed 3, 4, 5 times. And with each study of Kitab al-Tawheed, you're being handed this subject of Tawheed, of monotheism, in a manner where you protect yourself. Rather than liberate yourself and make yourself position yourself to have a better relationship with God. Facts. Get that out. The emotional symptoms, fear of judgment. Judging others extremely. That when you judge people, now I don't think it's a punishment of the ummah. I just think that it's an ignorance. It's an ignorance. Mind you, we are only, maybe 2 generations out of the Nation of Islam. We're only couple of generations out of the Nation of Islam. Many of the brothers left the Nation of Islam, the late 70s, early 80s, started trickling over to the Wharf Deen community, which was just another cult. It's another cult. So there was still no liberation from that cult-like mentality. We just went from one cult to another. And then we came from the Wharf Deen community into the Sunni community, and then Salafiyah came in, and with each and every movement, with each and every transition, we never focused on the social component of our ummah. We never concentrated. The concentration was always on Tawheed, and because whatever was the catalyst for that movement and made that movement, created momentum for that movement was what we focused on. You know what I mean? Like whatever was the catalyst for that movement. So when you look at, in the mid 90s to the late 90s when Salafiyya started to trickle into, and I'm not saying that Salafiyya emerged at that time, I'm saying the exposure to the Salafi Dawah in the mid 90s, to the late 90s, what was the catalyst for that movement? The catalyst for that movement was taken from certain scholars, name dropping certain scholars, and minhaj and, aqidah and things like that. You understand what I'm saying? That was the catalyst for those movements. So whenever a new movement comes in, whatever the catalyst is for that movement, that's what the focus and the concentration is on. You follow me? So with each and every movement, there was a catalyst for that movement and the concentration was on the catalyst. And then we totally took the focus off of the social component. The socio-economic component, because economics, we have still yet to talk about that. We have still yet to talk about creating, financial stability for our own communities. You know what I mean? That's still looked at as black nationalist talk amongst many African American Muslims. Meanwhile, our masjids look like hole in the walls. While other people's masjids, they got, $1 million chandeliers. You know what I mean? Backyards and basketball courts and, these huge Islamic centers. Meanwhile, we still over the chicken shack, smelling fried chicken for Jumu'ah. You understand what I'm saying? And then we think that we on to something. We've arrived, because here again, the concentration is on we on the haq and what the haq is. And the haq is usually the catalyst for that movement. And then we're forgetting about all of the other components. You understand? So it's not that it's a punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's just an ignorance on our part. We don't lead with knowledge. We lead with, the fluff of, what looks like intelligence. But in reality, it's not. It's ignorance. It's ignorance. So some of the emotional symptoms is fear of judgment. Judging others extremely harsh. That when a person is hypervigilant, when they judge people, and of course we got that from the Salafi community. When they judge somebody, it's almost like you don't even see the person as Muslim anymore. The Salafis don't know how to criticize someone and still leave their deen intact. You understand? Right, we lead with emotion. There you go. Very good. We lead with emotion. Our emotions navigate the terrain for us. Absolutely. Hypervigilance is number 3. Well, no, number 3 is unaddressed trauma. And from amongst the unaddressed trauma is, hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is the symptom of some of the unaddressed trauma. But judging others extremely harsh. We learn that from the Salafi community. When they judge people, when they criticize people, it's almost like the person might as well just leave Islam after it. After the Salafi is done with you, you are probably better off leaving Islam. Because there's nothing left of you when they're done with you. You understand? There's nothing left of you when they're done with you. When they criticize you, when they judge you, when they put their judgment down on you, there is nothing left of your Islam. And that's possible that is a symptom of the hypervigilance that many of them suffer from. Facts. Panic, worry, black and white thinking, whereby you find others either absolutely right or absolutely wrong. That is a symptom. That is an emotional symptom of hypervigilance. Hypervigilance. An emotional symptom of hypervigilance is that you have black and white thinking and that you find people either absolutely right or absolutely wrong. Absolutely. There is no in between. There is no the person's right, but I don't agree with them on this point. Or I don't agree with the person on that point or that point, but overall, I think the lecture was great. You understand? You are either absolutely right or absolutely wrong. And then, of course, the triggers. So what triggers a person that is hypervigilant? For you men that are in these relationships, men that are in marriages that are abusing women in their marriages, where you see your wife either as right or wrong, or yourself as right or wrong. There is no in between. Absolutism. Absolutely. Absolutely. There is no gray area. There is no room for a possibility of this or that. You are either absolutely right or absolutely wrong. This is a sign of hypervigilance. So what triggers a person that is hypervigilant? What triggers that person? Number one, feeling abandoned. If the man is in a relationship with a woman and he feels like, she could have done better than me. I know she could have done better than me. I know I don't deserve a woman that is that beautiful or that is that, diligent to, married life, right? So there's always this fear that she's going to leave me. So this fear of being left, triggers the person that is hypervigilant, right? So he has to constantly make you feel like you're not going to find anybody else other than him. Right? You're not going to find anybody else better than him. Or he'll use the reverse psychology. Well, go. You can leave. You want a divorce? I'll give you a divorce. Because I know you can probably go out there and have any brother. Like, how insecure are you, man? How you tell your wife if she want to go and, she can go find any man that she want? How do you do that? That's an insecurity. That is an insecurity. But it is triggered by a fear of abandonment. You are afraid that at some point she's going to get tired of your ish and leave. So you're triggered by the fear of abandonment. Anticipating judgment can create hypervigilance. You know that you did something and you know that your wife is going to say something to you about it. So you got to find a way to thwart, or you got to find a way to circumvent, right, what she's getting ready to say, because you can't deal with the pain of judgment. Emotional stress, being reminded of past traumas, and being in chaotic environments. All of these things trigger hypervigilance. This is what I wanted to present to you, brothers and sisters, today. Hopefully everybody is, who has the ability to fast today is fasting. Alhamdulillah, today is the day of Arafah, which means that, tomorrow is the Eid al-Adha, inshallah ta'ala. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your fast. For those of you who are fasting, for those of you who wanted to fast, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your fast, your intention. Jazakumullah khairan for, lending me your time. We went over a little bit more than I wanted to, but I just think that these discussions are so pertinent, so relative to, what we are dealing with today. For those of you women who have been in past abusive relationships, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ease your pain and allow you to make peace with, what happened to you, and allow you to, grow from that situation, and allow you to make, smarter, wiser choices. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala heal anybody that is going through any, physical pain, physical ailments. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, heal you and allow you to heal, provide you and facilitate you with what you need to heal. So with that being said, inshallah ta'ala, we'll conclude here. I don't really have time for a lot of this questions, but what you guys need to do now is start conversations. Why do I do this? I do this because I want greater conversations to be going on in our homes. The same discussion that we had the other day about Imam Siraj's children, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide them back to correct guidance. It was for us to have a conversation. I prayed Maghrib with my kids, my sons. And after we prayed, we had a long discussion about that situation, man. You know, these are things, these things when they happen, you know, they become discussions for our homes. You know, we table the discussion at dinner and, you know, at other times. You know, we need to have these discussions. So at least you do your part within your own circle, your own home. I can't, you know, I ain't going to be able to save everybody. But those people who are closest to me, my family, my children, my wives, you know what I'm saying? Like, I have an immediate responsibility to them, just as you guys do to your families. And these conversations, you know, children, don't forget these conversations. When I mentioned what happened to Imam Siraj's children to, you know, my 12-year-old was like, man, I don't think I'm going to be able to go to sleep tonight. You know, we're talking about the jinns, we're talking about shaitan, we're talking about, you know, being led astray. These things are real. These things are real. This is not a joke. These things are happening. And it's important that, you know, we have these discussions with, you know, with our families, with our children. So likewise, the abuse is real. For those of you who have gone through abusive situations, who have witnessed trauma, witnessed abuse, talk about those things. Have those discussions with your spouse. Have those discussions with your spouse. I wouldn't be able to bring those things up about myself had I not made peace with them, because it would have been a source of shame and embarrassment. It's nothing to be ashamed of. If you were subjected to trauma, if you were traumatized, if pain was inflicted on you, whether emotionally, you know, psychologically, physically, sexually, if pain was, you know, imposed on you by someone else, that's not your fault. Forgive yourself. We talk about forgiveness. The first person that you need to forgive is you. Forgive yourself, man. Stop beating yourself up. Live your life. Live your life, man. Understand that, you know, it wasn't your fault. The person decided to take their trauma out on you. Hurt people. I don't know why they chose you. I don't know why. It's just like a bully. If a bully picks on somebody out of 100 people in a room, he walks over to this person and he saw this person as a vic and he picked on that particular person. You can't say to that person that was picked on, you can't say to that person he chose you for this. You don't know why. You don't know why. It's not your fault that the person chose you to inflict pain on. And the first person that you need to forgive, not the person who inflicted the pain on you. Forgive yourself, man. Forgive yourself. Today, forgive yourself. You didn't do anything wrong. And then begin, you know, making peace with yourself, making peace with your demons. Stop letting this stuff haunt you. Stop letting this stuff prevent you from living your best life, man. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from you your fast. Spend the rest of your day, inshallah ta'ala, doing something for somebody else. They say that the easiest way to find, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of other people. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of other people. You know that people are fasting today. You know that the masjid is, you know, might be hosting an iftar, cook some food, go down, serve the people, you know. Go give something, make something for your neighbor. Find something, you know, halal to do. This is, you know, the last of the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. Obviously, tomorrow's the Eid, inshallah ta'ala. And that concludes the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, which the Prophet ﷺ said that there are no days on the Islamic calendar that righteous deeds done in those days are more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. Take advantage of this opportunity, inshallah, the few hours that we have left before it's time to break fast, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama tasliman kathira. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Just a couple of announcements before we have the conference in Atlantic City, at the Atlantic City Convention Center coming up in October. The last weekend in October, inshallah ta'ala. For those of you who are in the area, you came out last year and you enjoyed yourself last year, alhamdulillah, you will definitely enjoy yourself this year. Alhamdulillah, the Atlantic City community, Pleasantville, Sister Zakiya and her crew have some entertainment, some things lined up. So please clear your schedule and make room for the Atlantic City weekend Islamic Weekend Conference, which is the last weekend of October. Also, I will be in Charlotte, North Carolina, October 13th for Domestic Violence Symposium, inshallah ta'ala. Hopefully, I'm trying to get that Clay couple to come out there with us. Inshallah, they're not too far away in Atlanta. But I will, the 13th, October the 13th and the 14th, I will be in Charlotte, North Carolina, inshallah ta'ala. So if you in that area, next weekend, myself and Muhammad Munir Mufti will be in Boston Islamic Center. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll be in Boston next week for some workshops dealing with the youth. I will be doing a workshop, relationships, halal and haram. Hopefully I will try to stream it live. So if you're in the Boston area or anywhere close and you can get out, alhamdulillah, Muhammad Munir Mufti is definitely someone that, is a joy listening to. It's a joy. He's one of the very few people that I can actually stomach, that I can actually listen to. Some people, 60 seconds and I'm like, turn it off. So that's what I have coming up for these. Then of course there's the retreat in Connecticut, the Sisters Retreat in Connecticut, inshallah ta'ala, which is in September. The retreat in Connecticut, inshallah. So, and all of the flyers for all of these events are on my Facebook page. So you can look on my Facebook page or my Instagram page. You can find all of it. For those of you who are not Muslim, who are listening in and you are interested in the religion of Islam, please, reach out to your local mosque, or you can send me an email and I'll try to point you in the right direction, inshallah ta'ala. Imam Shadeed Muhammad at Gmail. IMAMSHADEED Muhammad MUHAMMAD at gmail.com. Inshallah ta'ala, send me an email and we can point you in the right direction to help you get some correct knowledge of Islam. Jazakumullahu khairan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.